In this edition of Southern Newsweek, drive-through vaccination clinics do good business in Oamaru and Dunedin, library fines become a thing of the past in Christchurch, and the Masters Games may be cancelled, but that's not putting one wannabe competitor off. Kia ora, good evening, I'm Melissa Barton. A drive-through vaccination clinic popped up in Oamaru last weekend. More than 300 people, mostly in family carloads, received a vaccination. For children, it was their first shot, while for many adults, it was a booster jab.
Families getting their vaccinations. Yesterday saw people coming out in droves to the drive-through clinic that popped up for a single day at Centennial Park in Oamaru. Dunedin staff from the Pacific Island and Maori-focused health group Te Kaika vaccinated over 300 people, young and old, over the day.
We had a great turnout in terms of whānau, lots of children under the age of 12 coming into the cars. We might see three or four children in the car with 2 adults in the front doing boosters.
Outreach Clinical Coordinator Brodie says vaccination data helps them identify where a drive-through clinic would be most effective, with Te Kaika planning to come back to Oamaru in the near future, as well as visiting other towns in the wider region.
Plans to go into central Otago, to move further south into Milton and Balclutha. We've run clinics there before. They've been large clinics, they've been drive-throughs, walk-ins, and we will return again because we've been requested to do them in those areas.
Dunedin's drive-through clinic off Victoria Road is still running, with queues during weekdays not being too long.
What we do see some trends, I guess we see trends that so we have larger amounts quite often in the weekends. That's what we've noticed, okay? The families pour through our drive-through.
The Victoria Road clinic is set to run from Wednesday through to Sunday over the near future. In Dunedin, the South Today.
A Dunedin-based Ukrainian woman is fearing for her family back home as tensions escalate around the border between Ukraine and Russia. Olha Viazenko has concerns about what might happen if the hundreds of thousands of Russian troops near the country's borders invade her homeland.
Watching with concern from afar. Dunedin woman Olha Viazenko is worried about the future of her Ukrainian homeland, with family and friends telling her war is near.
I spoke with my mom half an hour ago, and she's really worried about the situation around Ukraine. Russia has 100,000 troops around the borders of Ukraine, and we do not know when it happens. It's just a question, not if, but when and how.
Tensions have been rising between the two former Soviet Union countries over the past month. It's a conflict Viazenko says began in 2014 and has already claimed the lives of 14,000 Ukrainians. US President Joe Biden has been critical of Vladimir Putin's massing of troops and military hardware on the Russian border with Ukraine. Viazenko says her country folk know where the bomb shelters are.
Everybody knows what they have to keep with them, such as documents or whatever. Everybody knows what to do in case of bombing, where to hide, where to go, and where to seek help.
International relations expert Professor Robert Patman believes Vladimir Putin may just be bluffing when he gets troops to do exercises on the border with the Ukraine. But Viazenko is hopeful for a diplomatic end to the posturing.
We still have hope for diplomatic resolving of this conflict. And this is also, and we also seek for the diplomatic support.
US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has issued a formal proposal to Russia suggesting a serious diplomatic path forward and strongly suggesting Russia should choose it. Olha Viazenko is hopeful for a peaceful solution, but is scared of a worst-case scenario playing out.
We fear about the people living in Ukraine, so they have to fight. They will die, and it is really sad. And it could be the Third World War, and nobody wants that.
She's hoping Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern will back other world leaders in trying to facilitate a peaceful solution to the long-running conflict. In Dunedin, the South Today.
In line with a growing global trend, the Christchurch City Council will soon drop its overdue fines policy at all of its 20 libraries. Following robust discussions at a recent council meeting, councillors voted to adopt the no fines operating model.
Councillors decided to remove charges for all overdue items and wipe all historical debt from the 1st of March. With 5% or 11,000 of their items currently overdue, library staff are keen for the new no fines policy to start and are fully supportive of the motion brought to Council by Councillor Sarah Templeton late last year.
We are very, very supportive of it. In fact, this is part of a larger trend or movement that's happening internationally and across New Zealand public libraries. So it's something we've had our eye on for a while, and we're very delighted when Councillor Templeton actually initiated. She asked us what our views were, and we developed some information really about what that would look like for Christchurch City Council and libraries.
Currently, library fines for overdue items are 70 cents a day to a maximum penalty of $21. Evidence supplied by other national libraries suggests that when fines and debts for overdue items are wiped, many items thought lost suddenly return. For many, like motion supporter Joshua Tulilamali, personal experience means he has good reason to call for the end of fines.
There was a time when I was starting my degree and I had a couple of books which I didn't return on time. I got a notice about it and I forgot to return them, and I ended up leaving them a little while too long and ended up costing $100.
He says it was money he didn't have, but thankfully a librarian waived his fine. However, he said the discretion wasn't applied evenly.
We also collected stories from people who've experienced this, including a mum whose husband had died and didn't realise that he had books out, and with those books she got his fines.
There will, however, also be charges for any items or books deemed lost. Robertson says that when customers advise them an item is lost, they'll work closely with them to sort out a suitable payment for the lost property. In Christchurch, The South Today.
A 90-year-old Wellingtonian is keen to show age is no barrier when it comes to athletic talents and remaining competitive. Jim Blair was one of many people getting ready for the Masters Games. And while that event's now been cancelled, he's staying on in Dunedin for the athletics season.
90 years old but still throwing strong. Wellington athlete Jim Blair has been involved in sports for most of his life and is one of many athletes who are looking forward to competing in the now cancelled New Zealand Masters Games.
Yes, there's a bit of disappointment that it's been cancelled. I've competed in most of them in the last 5 or 10 years, alternatively at Wanganui and down here, and I thoroughly enjoy it to catch up with old mates and just the camaraderie and the relaxation.
Next month's games had to be cancelled due to limits on crowd gatherings following the country's move into the red traffic light setting. Blair often spends his summer in Dunedin for the athletics season, accumulating records when he comes down.
But down here, being the first one as a 90-year-old, I've actually set already 13 Otago records and 13 New Zealand records in that 90-year-old age group.
And Blair has a long list of sports that keep him active.
Well, mainly I do the throwing and jumping events. I do the high jump and the long jump, although I call it low flying for the high jump. It's not very high nowadays. But I do the 5 throws: shot put, discus throw, javelin throw, hammer throw and heavy weight.
Blair attributes his good health to playing sports his whole life, with football being a particular favourite.
I enjoy having a game each season and a social atmosphere, and also my aim was to have 3 generations on the field each time, and I've been able to achieve that until this year. Unfortunately, I lost my son last year, but my son-in-law stood in, so I still had 3 generations for the 90th birthday game.
He's planning to complete a full season here before heading back home to Wellington to avoid what he calls the chilly Dunedin winter. In Dunedin, The South Today.
Still to come on Southern Newsweek, a former Prime Minister shares some of his political views during a quick trip to Queenstown, and aerial surveys show paradise duck numbers are higher than ever. Welcome back. Predator-free Dunedin's vision of a pest-free city has received a major boost after securing another $7 million. The organisation says the significant injection allows it to expand its operational area.
A multi-million-dollar funding boost is set to help predator-free Dunedin grow its operations by thousands of hectares.
We're going to be extending our operational area by 30,000 hectares to the west of State Highway 1. We will be doing possum control and following the great work of Osprey.
The Crown-owned company, Predator Free 2050, has committed more than $4 million to a total of $7 million. This allows Predator Free Dunedin to deliver on the government's goal of eliminating stoats, rats and possums by 2050.
So we've been seeing a huge number of kiriru and silvereye. We're seeing a lot more tui and bellbird, and we're even seeing some of the species from Orokonui coming outside of the fence up around the Halo project area.
Additional support has come from Wanita Forest Products, City Forests and the AAW Jones Charitable Trust. Predator Free Dunedin Communications and Engagement Advisor Kimberly Collins says possum traps will also be handed out to households around the city. Their efforts to date already reaping rewards.
The wildlife is coming back. We're removing the possums and the rats and the stoats, and we're getting the community engaged, and it's really exciting to be able to expand that work thanks to this additional funding.
Since it started in 2018, Predator Free Dunedin has removed about 45,000 predators from 30,000 hectares of Dunedin's urban and rural land. The funding secured will be paid in regular instalments until 2025. In Dunedin, the South Today.
Former Prime Minister Sir John Key made a flying visit to Queenstown recently. The three-term leader was checking up on $1 million section he's bought as an investment, while also reminding the media about his political views.
The grass may be dry and dead now, but one day this will be a lush golf course. Sir John Key and his son Max visited Queenstown on Friday to officially hit the first ball on the site of Gibbston Valley Resort's 9-hole golf course. The former Prime Minister has added to his already large property portfolio through buying one of the $1 million-plus sections currently under development at Gibbston, with no firm plans of building here.
It's nicely positioned, in relation to sort of, both Queenstown and the things we're interested in. There's a variety of golf courses around the way, and so we just looked at it and thought, well, look, it's nice to have an investment here and an opportunity to have a stake in the ground.
The three-term leader of New Zealand says that while the country's geographic isolation gave it more time to respond to COVID-19, that extra time hasn't been used to full effect.
You have to ask the question whether the government's really used that time to actually put in place what they could see was coming. I mean, Omicron's not new. People have been aware of it for quite a while, and I don't think it's just me, but I think there's been a widespread view that the government's been caught a bit flat-footed.
The former leader says the National Party is set to do well under the new leadership of Christopher Luxton.
Yeah, I think it's game on, actually. That doesn't mean that it's going to be easy over the next 18 months. Incumbency gives any government a huge advantage, but I think the Labour Party won't be sleeping as easy as they have been recently.
Key and his son later played a round of golf at Arrowtown's Millbrook Resort before flying on to Auckland. In Queenstown, the South Today.
The delicate needlework of embroidery went on display in Weston near Oamaru last weekend. The exhibition was a chance for the local Embroiderers Guild to celebrate more than 50 years since it was founded back in 1971.
Making up for missing out last year, the North Otago Embroiderers Guild held its Southern Regional Exhibition in Weston near Oamaru over the weekend. The organisation had hoped to put on the display to the public last year in celebration of 50 years, but that had to be put off due to COVID-19. As it happened, it was the Guild's first exhibition showcasing the intricate skills of its members in more than 10 years.
Everybody does something differently and shows the talent within the community.
The exhibition's theme was about passing the craft of embroidery between generations, with plenty of help and advice available for those interested in having a go.
People think the word guild is for experts, but it's not. You don't have to be a stitcher to join the guild. We just teach as we go along and help each other out, and nothing's impossible.
The weekend also included a regional meeting for the dozen embroiderers guilds that exist across the south. Near Oamaru, the South Today.
Otago bird shooters could see a bountiful harvest this season, with the highest number of paradise shell ducks recorded in 32 years of aerial monitoring. Otago Fish and Game officers counted almost 24,000 shell ducks in the Otago region last week.
This year's duck shooting season may be a bumper year for recreational hunters if a recent count is anything to go by. The season doesn't start until May, but monitoring by Otago Fish and Game has revealed large populations in the area.
So at this time of the year, all the paradise shell duck accumulate together on about 40 sites around Otago, and we go in a fixed-wing aeroplane and go around and take high detail photographs of those particular ponds and the birds that accumulate on them.
Their aerial surveys cover large parts of the region, from the east coast right across to the Lakes District, down to South Otago and Upper Clutha, through to the Strath Tyre. Otago Fish and Game CEO Ian Hadland says covering the large area can be a mission.
Sounds all very glamorous, going around, flying around and looking at ducks and counting them, but actually looking down all the time, doing tight turns over ponds, isn't really for the faint-hearted. It's actually quite a hard yakka, and some people can get pretty crook.
While there's yearly fluctuations, Otago's paradise shell duck population has been on an upward trend over the past 3 decades. Hadland isn't surprised by the figures, with a good breeding season boosted by favourable weather, plenty of food and no major flooding.
But our trend counts give us a very good idea about what the population is doing. My suspicion is that the population is actually going up at the moment, but we'll be able to confirm that by the time we get the data out of the images and onto some paper and into our database.
Paradise shell duck molt counts have been conducted each January since 1990. That's when the ducks gather in mobs during the molting season. The population data is used to set hunting limits for the game bird season, which is set to open on the 7th of May. In Otago, the South Today.
Still to come on Southern Newsweek, a popular touring circus in Dunedin makes the difficult decision to close its doors. And for those travelling through Ashburton, some local school children have an amazing challenge for you to take up. Welcome back. Living life under the government's red traffic light setting has forced many events to be cancelled and has left the future of the Great Moscow Circus up in the air. The big top of the long-running travelling circus is still up in Dunedin, but crowd restrictions means it's not viable to stage shows. And that's left the livelihoods of around 50 performers and family members in limbo.
For one clown, the show can't go on. Ozzy the Clown has been performing in Dunedin at the Great Moscow Circus, but now he's uncertain when he'll perform next.
Now I don't have a job. I don't know what I'm going to do. We're becoming a little bit miserable at the moment. We're sort of stuck in Dunedin, but it's a beautiful city. I love Dunedin, a great place to be stuck into.
Ozzy and the rest of the circus is in limbo at the moment, following the government switch to the COVID-19 red light traffic setting. The circus has a community of around 50 people working or living the circus lifestyle who don't know what the future holds. With crowds limited to 100 people under the restrictions, the circus says it's not affordable to perform shows, leaving performers like Ozzy out of work.
I might stay here permanently, so if anybody needs a clown with no talent except making people laugh, I'm available. I'm here.
The circus is applying for funding from the Ministry of Culture and Heritage to help see them through. In Dunedin, the South Today.
Some Christchurch residents are fighting to keep their history alive after doubts over the future of the New Brighton Museum site. The Society's lease on the 109-year-old building runs out in 4 months, after which the museum may have to move out or be forced to pay higher rent.
Cups of tea and catching up with friends are commonplace at the New Brighton Museum. A core group of 25 volunteers have turned this dusty old Christchurch museum into a bright and vibrant community meeting place. And while visitor numbers have dwindled in recent times, plenty of locals are still coming through to do their genealogy and research, as well as checking old school photos. Secretary-Treasurer of the museum, Peggy Butterfield, says New Brighton is a very close community and losing the asset would be very disappointing.
We've got to do this. We've got to buy the building and preserve the memories. We're holding the place together. The other volunteers, and we all went to school in kindy together. So New Brighton is a very close community. We stay.
There's no cost to visit the museum, although a $2 donation is encouraged, with visitors welcomed in with a cuppa and a biscuit.
People pop in as a meeting place now. They really, it has become a meeting place. The girls are constantly making a cup of tea for someone that's popped in.
Butterfield says a lot of the area's history was lost after the earthquakes, so it's important to preserve what's left.
New Brighton has changed so much. We've lost our school, we've lost our shopping area, but people that lived in the area, as I mentioned before, we're very close. People that did live down here have got so many memories.
They've enlisted the help of broadcasting student Freddy Wilkie, who's digitising audio recordings of past New Brighton celebrities and turning them into videos.
As a prospective visitor, and a young one at that, I noticed that the museum attracts an older crowd, and there wasn't much that interests somebody of my age, so I really, and they were looking for some technology, so I'm really helping out, bring this place to the 21st century, bring some new technology in.
The group need to raise another $85,000 to be able to buy the $175,000 building. And with the clock ticking, they've hired a professional fundraiser to try and help save the museum's home, after exhausting donations from the local community. In New Brighton, The South Today.
Work is underway in central Otago to uncover further remains of Cooper's Terrace, a historic mining settlement in Arrowtown. Archaeological artist Jan Morrison has been visiting the site for more than 10 years, clearing vegetation, and is now reaching out for some help.
Unearthing history. Arrowtown-based archaeological artist Jan Morrison has been chipping away at this historic site for the better part of a decade. Her work has focused on cleaning up 3 stone huts and a garden wall with a stone entranceway leading to a compound inside.
A garden wall here, so it's a stacked wall. It's not built stones flat like a dwelling would be. So we've got a garden wall that's been identified with historical photos from the archives, so we know what it is. And about here, it becomes this elaborate and very unusual entranceway.
Now she's been granted new archaeological authority to dig at the site, supervised by Dunedin-based archaeologist Shah Bryden. The pair have been documenting what's currently exposed and are considering stabilising the walls of one of the huts built by miner John Miller around 1900.
And it's so striking that, well, one of my little dreams is to have that restored. So it's standing up here. People can look down on it from the walking track.
She's been happy to see interest in the site from passers-by, including some who have skills like stone masonry, which could be helpful to the project in the future. Along with clearing vegetation, Morrison's also been using her skills to map out the area.
So we're flanked by the pipeline, the walking track on the right, and the road on the left, and we've got this long, narrow area where there is a 13 metres of garden wall that then turns to an entranceway with a hut in front of it, which I've started to draw now. That's why I've got my grid line set up.
She's hosting a working bee this Sunday morning and is encouraging interested helpers to come and join them with their pruning saws and loppers. The aim is to clear more vegetation nearby, where more historic structures lie. And Morrison has also started a Give a Little page to help fund the work, helping to preserve this piece of New Zealand's history. In Arrowtown, The South Today.
And if you think you're good at keeping your bearings, you might want to call into a farm in Ashburton. A group of local school children are inviting the public to try out a maze that's been cut through a field of corn on their South Canterbury farm.
A place to get lost in. 15-year-old Scarlett Hanrahan and her two younger brothers Fergus and Freddy, plus neighbour Nell Marie, are running this corn maze just north of Ashburton as a business, charging $10 entry for adults and $5 for children, as well as selling ice creams and soft drinks to tired maze walkers. Scarlett's father Randal Hanrahan says it's a great way for his daughter to learn how to run a business.
Yeah, she's running it as a business. We set her up with the stock, and she had to pay all the money back for the ice creams and the drinks and the like. And she's had to pay her brothers for any work that they've done in the maze, cleaning it out. So, and she's paying herself a wage as she goes through it. So at the end there'll be a profit, and yeah.
The maze started about 8 years ago, with the design being mapped out on the ground while the corn was still little.
I originally did it as a fundraiser for a local school. And that went well. Did that for a few years.
So far, no one has been so hopelessly lost in the maze that they need to be rescued.
Everyone normally, even if you don't come out the exit, everyone comes out the entry either way. So you're always going to get out.
It's not too hard to find your way out as long as you don't panic.
The maze, through a field of maize, is set to be open on weekends until Easter. In Ashburton, the South Today.
And that wraps up this edition of Southern Newsweek. For the latest news and videos from the Southern region, head online to odt.co.nz. And you can follow Channel 39 on YouTube to catch our news bulletins on demand. Ka kite anō.
Public interest journalism funded through New Zealand On Air.